Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the first panel session of the Women Leading in Local Government program. I'm Gary Kerr and I'm Jalinda's understudy this afternoon, as Jalinda's had to do a quick trip down to Toowoomba to look after her elderly mother. Now, this month's topic is Resilient You, and Jalinda took you through a webinar on the 5th of March that started out with the modern definition of resilience, which is advancing despite adversity. Resilience is about perseverance and diligence in the face of setbacks, about sometimes having to dig deep to find that extra bit of perseverance. Jalinda spoke about challenges and how they make life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. And we rise up stronger and more determined because of it, which is what makes leaders successful. Speaking of successful leaders, we have three with us today to share their insights into resilience, stress management, and personal agility. Firstly, I would like to introduce Jenny Hill, Mayor of Townsville City Council. Jenny has over 20 years service in local government. In 2012, she was elected the first female mayor of Townsville. Jenny is well known for her passion and advocacy for Townsville and the tropical lifestyle, and her leadership through challenging times such as the Queensland nickel closure. Also with us this afternoon is Councillor Lisa Bradley. Lisa is a councillor with the Logan City Council, initially elected in 2008, and served as a councillor until she was appointed to serve on the Interim Management Committee by the Minister for Local Government in 2019, when council was put into administration. Lisa was re-elected in March 2020. Prior to her election in 2008, Lisa was a registered nurse for 19 years, including 14 years as an intensive care nurse. And there is no doubt that Lisa has really had her resilience capability tested both as a nurse and as a councillor. We also have joining us today is Jane McNamara, Mayor of Flinders Shire, based in Hughenden. Jane was first elected councillor to Flinders Shire in March 2016, which is continuing her family's involvement in local government since 1952. We all know about the resilience of people in rural and remote regions as they battle droughts, floods, and many other challenges that councils and their elected members, such as Flinders, play a crucial role in supporting community and their people's resilience. Now, we pick up the panel session with the panelists being asked to identify what's the strongest way, or how do they best deal with resilience, and how do they keep their resilience levels strong. Now, in the webinar that Jalinda did earlier this month, we did a little exercise or a poll after looking at 5-point formula to build and maintain resilience. Now, those 5 points are emotional intelligence. So it's about self-management skills, resilience, stress management, and agility. It's about energy management, which is health balance, priorities, focusing on things that energize you. It's about connections, an inbuilt need to socialise, belong, fit in, be a part of a community. It's about perspective, a realistic view and broader understanding of the flow-on impact now and into the future. And purpose, values, and strengths, all those inner core strengths that we reflected on in Module 1. Now, Lisa, out of those 5 elements, which one would you consider your strongest factor in keeping your resilience strong or helping you to rise up from the knocks? And can you give us some example of how you've used that factor?
I probably combination of all of them, I think, and I can't remember exactly what they all are now, but I am, let me put it this way, to deal with my stress management particularly, I do things like I meditate, I exercise, I eat healthy, I do yoga, I do some self-loving things. I make sure that I plan ahead my time so that I have some time for me and my family and loved ones. And I plan long-term sort of when I want to go away, etc., so that it's all locked into my calendar beforehand so that I don't get forgotten. But on the flip side, I do also make sure that I make myself extremely accessible to the community so that they can come and connect with me. But it's all very open and transparent when that is, etc. And I probably actually, when I first started as a counsellor in 2008, I had the best advice ever given to me by a former CEO who said, start how you want to end up. So right from the start, I made sure that my mobile wasn't out there publicly. So people, if they wanted to speak to me, had to call my office or email. And that actually makes sure that you have a track record of where there is a record of ins and outs of what actually happens with constituents. And that has actually put me in good stead, particularly with what happened last term. I've always been a one who writes notes, and often that has been the only person who has written notes in meetings. So that is another thing that has put me in good stead. So just everything that I've done, I think it's a combination, I would say.
Okay, thanks, Lisa, for that. Probably taking those notes comes from your nursing days, I suppose, where you probably had to take meticulous notes.
Absolutely, we did law in uni for nursing, and was drummed into me right from the get-go that anything could end up in court. So, and lo and behold, things have ended up in court.
Yes, but not as a nurse, as a counsellor.
Can I just say too, I've got a bit of a coaching background as well. I think that has put me, that has helped me a lot to deal with my stress. For example, now as one of the 4 who was left after last term, and we have to face court for a number of court cases coming up, and we've had 2 so far. So I've done hypnosis prior to the first one. The second one, I'm so advanced now in my coaching that I can sort of have the positive mindset to actually make sure I'm right going through that.
Okay.
I keep calm through the whole thing.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. Thanks, Lisa. Jenny, what about you? What do you consider as the strongest factor in keeping your resilience strong?
Look, looking at the 5 things that are mentioned, I think they're very important, and it's how you have that mix. So it's difficult, particularly with the new legislation, to be able to go home and unburden with a partner, because there's so much that we really need to now keep, particularly as a mayor, that has to remain confidential. So having those networks to unburden with, it's not the way it was 20 years ago. So you need to do things to be able to build your resilience. So fortunately for me, I'd done quite a few things in my life. I'd been in the Army Reserve, I did officer training, worked predominantly with men, worked out bush, got shot at, and Jane and I often talk about the funny side of those sort of things. But that course, outside of myself being previously a medical scientist, that was the thing that pushed me to understand the lengths you can go to and what you can do without sleep and really testing yourself. In today's modern world, that's a lot harder, but you need to be able to find people you can talk to. You need to ensure that you do make time for your spouse and family, which I've always tried to do. Unlike you, Lisa, our mobiles are publicly known and people do ring, and they expect to be able to contact their councillors and their mayors in the north. So you occasionally get the midnight call, and if someone rings me at midnight, I have a tendency to ring them back at midnight with their answer. So that then quickly puts people in. If you want a phone call during office hours, you ring me during office hours. So I had a former mayor who told me that little trick. I do believe, in fact, I'm probably fitter now than what I was 20 years ago when I first started. I make time 3 times a week for training. I particularly enjoy boxing when we get to do it. It gives me a physical outlet to some of the frustrations. But you've got to have those connections, though, with your friends and family, and you've got to try and build up a trust network. You can't keep everything internalised, but there are ways you can let off steam with family and friends, and you've got to be able to do that.
Mm. No, thank you, Jenny, for that. All very wise words. Now, Jane, your strongest factor in keeping your resilience strong?
I don't think I'm particularly good at any of them, Gary. I read that and I thought, oh, there's a lot that I need to work on. And I think it's because when I was born 7 years after my brothers, so I was always a bit of a loner anyway. So I've learnt to deal with issues on my own. But as I work through this, I'm very fortunate in that my husband was mayor for 15 years, so he does understand some of the stresses, though I don't think he quite gets Belcara. And he hates the sound of the word, but I do. We do some hypotheticals sometimes, which I can just talk through some, scenarios, I guess, is rather than being. I think you do need to talk to people who've been there or other mayors. I have a good relationship with other mayors, which is useful. Also, I'm very fortunate now, coming up to 2 years, that I've had a new CEO, so that I have a very good relationship with. And obviously, some of the issues in a small town and council like we have, the councillors and or myself and the CEO are very close in those, so that's very good. But I also do make sure that about once a fortnight we, because of the flooding event, we have mental health people coming out here, and I've formed a relationship with the person who comes out to Hughenden, so that we catch up for a coffee once every couple of weeks, and caught up again yesterday because we've had an issue, a community issue, which I felt I needed to not only help myself, but to help my community to heal. And I think that's really good when you have those connections. So I think connections and relationships is probably I'm terrible at exercise. I go home to that background there, love my sunsets, that sort of reflection. And lately I've taken to playing Mahjong on my phone, which basically lets me forget about all the other things that are going on in life. So just a few short bursts of that. Try and keep away from the alcohol. That's one of the main things. I think you just need to, that's a really short-term fix and not a good fix. Occasionally, yes, but not a good way to go about it. So I guess it's connections for me and relationships.
Yeah, I think that was evident, Jane, when I was sort of just doing a bit of research. Is that you seem to be very keen on understanding the I suppose the mood of the community and how certain events, whether they be droughts or floods, impact on them and so forth, and have a very empathetic side to you in your role.
Yeah, well, that's what I've grown up with. I'm a third generation grazier, and that's basically, at the moment we've got grasshoppers and they're driving me crazy. And I just joked with Jenny, we need to start exporting them. We need to find something good about them. But I even asked the priest this morning and he said, they're all God's creatures, Jane. And I went, well,
what was he thinking?
Can we just find a use for them then?
Sorry, I should say, what was she thinking?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. No. Thank you, Jane, for that. Now, one of the I think everybody sort of understands, those that have been in the role for a number of terms and those that are just new in the role, is about stress management. Stress is a daily part of life, and managing stress is about recognising the symptoms, identifying the triggers, and making some changes to reduce the impact on yourself. Jenny, can you share with us your top stress management tip when you use that and how it works for you?
Stress has always been.
From the sound of it.
Stress is always there. I suppose it's just the levels it's at. And I agree with Jane. One of the easiest things to do is to turn to alcohol, and you should never allow yourself to do that. As I said, getting away from it all, occasionally dumbing down and watching something stupid on Netflix like a Big Bang Theory. My husband asks me why I watch those shows, and it empties the mind. It takes away all the thoughts in my head of what's happening. Physical activity is really important. It's a great way of, and I do it at the start of the day. I come into work, then have a shower, get ready for the day, and I'm usually in a much better mood than when I first go to the gym. So I take that time. I've got a personal trainer and a couple of girlfriends, and we really hit the weights or circuit training as hard as we can for about 3/4 of an hour. So the other thing too is to find, as we said earlier, to try and find some of those people who you can unload onto. In Jane's scenario about using scenario or hypotheticals, that's all we can do in this day and age. It's very difficult to get into detail with people, and you've got to ensure that you've got a group of people around you who understand the stress you go through, the people you work with. You never ever want to take out your anger on them, and there will be times you will be angry about something. That doesn't mean you have to internalise it either, but you should never ever take it out on the staff or the people around you. You've just got to learn to manage that.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Jane, what about you? How do you sort of manage your stress levels apart from going home and just watching the sunset every night?
Yeah, I guess going home is good. And I'm 87 k's from home, so I have a little house in town. And just to add to my stress, I actually semi-care for my husband's 98-year-old aunt. So yes, so I leave the office, and it's actually good in some ways having her here, because if I am upset or anything, she just hands me the tissue box, and you can just sort of unburden a little bit that way. I was never a morning person before this job, but now I go to bed when I'm tired. I might even, sorry, Jenny and Lisa, but it's only 2 minutes to anywhere in Hughenden, so I can even slip home and have a little nanny nap if things are really rough, and I kind of think, I just need to go and empty my head and just have a quick 5-minute ziz. So if I'm tired, I take time out for myself in that respect. It's taken 4 years, though, for me to actually block out periods of time where Brendan and I can go away together, or block out time when I can actually go home. From my perspective, going home, I can actually just be the Jillaroo out there, not the partner. And I just say, where do you want me to go on the four-wheeler and whatever. So at the moment, being able to go home, look at the wildflowers, look at the sunsets, and I love my dogs. We have 12 Maremas that guard the sheep. We've got 5 working dogs. So, I always offer to go out and find Benji and give him a bit of a hug and tell him what a good boy he is, looking after his 700 or 800 sheep all on his own. So, so things like that, I think, where you can actually get away. And the other thing I love is audiobooks. I get myself immersed in a book, and I do a lot of hours in the car. So in between phone calls on the Bluetooth, it's really good to listen to a good book.
All right. Yeah, very, very wise words, and I think a lot of people would do exactly the same too. And what about you, Lisa?
I suppose I disclosed a few things just before when I answered. For example, this morning I got up and meditated before I did anything else, so my mind was very clear and present. I like to stay present in the moment rather than focus on what ifs and the past, etc. So I really try and stay present. Like I said before, I manage my time and I plan ahead. So I plan little short, self-loving activities for myself, like a massage or go to the beach, get out in nature. They're the things that recharge me, make me feel my true, authentic self. For example, last weekend, my son and I went for a hike and spent a few hours just having a lovely time chatting to each other and connecting. So it's the connection with loved ones, friends, just making sure that they don't miss out on you. I have seen so many marriages end in my time as a counsellor. And so I always say to new counsellors, just make sure you look after your loved ones because they're the ones that get impacted the most.
Yes.
This year I've decided that I'm actually turn my mobile off when I get home. So that's one of my little new things I've started this year. Like I said before, I don't give my mobile out. That's put me in good stead. People can email me and if their issues are dealt with. I do a lot of mobile offices so that people can connect with me. What else do? I plan my holidays. So once a year I have a really good holiday where I go away for at least 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And during that time I don't take anything work related. So I actually do become true me again. I exercise. So for example, like I said, I do yoga. I did restorative yoga on Saturday afternoon. And I've just recently last few weeks got back into cycling. So yesterday morning, for example, I rode in and out into Brisbane to South Bank, had a lovely coffee, came back, took me about 2 hours. But anyway, it's a really good way to get those natural feel good sort of hormones happening.
Yeah.
I realised after we went into administration that all that stress had actually accumulated in my body, all the cortisol. So last year I started to go on a diet, and so now I'm actually at my ideal weight. And so I endeavour to sort of eat healthy. Back with the alcohol, I probably limit myself to 2 glasses of wine if I'm going to drink. That's it, no more. It doesn't do much for your body otherwise. And particularly out in public, I definitely don't have any more than 2 in public. What else do I do to manage my stress?
Well, just to butt in a second there, Lisa. As we know, stress can sort of build up over a period of time, but there's also instances where you can be very stressful situation right there and then. You might go to a public meeting and then all of a sudden it becomes very, very threatening, I suppose, or dare I say, even around the council table over a certain hot topic, it become very stressful. What sort of things do you do to sort of try and deal with that immediate stress?
I never take it personally, that's one thing. But for example, I'll give you a scenario that happened a couple of weeks ago. I had a community meeting and I knew there were going to be some hot-headed people there. So right from the start, I introduced myself and the key people who were there, and I set the tone from the start. So I want everyone to be respectful of each person's point of view. You're entitled to your view. These are the professional staff who are here to I'm not an expert, but these people are, so please be respectful. And I actually had to pull up some people a couple of times, but I stuck to that. I stuck to that rule of, just being mindful of language, etc.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. Jenny, in your situation there, if you sort of come across an issue that you maybe weren't expecting to be stressful or becomes stressful because something either gets out of hand or whatever. How do you deal with stress in that moment rather than sort of, as I said, dealing with it on an ongoing basis?
Look, we're particularly mayors up here, we're confronted with all sorts of situations. Councils here are particularly around disaster management. And Jane and myself went through the floods about 2 years ago. That can be quite difficult because you've got a number of competing interests, including some of the councillors and some of their behaviours, and you might be dealing with a response, an immediate response, and they're upset because you're not giving them immediate attention on an issue that might be big for them but doesn't really matter in the whole scheme of things. So situations like that can get very heated and very volatile. You have to keep your cool and you have to be focused on what is the here and now. Information will be coming in and you may have to change your position over something. You've just got to accept that you need to be flexible. And you can go back and look at it afterwards. You can go back and get angry afterwards. But right then, right at that point in time, you've got to deal with what is important. You've got to try and placate the people who think they are important when they're not really, and just work through it. You cannot let the situation drag you down, especially when you're the mayor, you're the leader of the community. You've got to be in full control the whole time.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. And Jane, what about you in that situation where something just might crop up all of a sudden, be very stressful, and you find that you can't just duck around the corner and lie down for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
What are the other what other sort of things do you do to sort of manage that sort of stress?
I'll just give one scenario. Social media, the warriors, the keyboard warriors, that I find them very stressful.
Yeah.
And earlier this year, we've had an issue with water. Jenny's had a bigger issue with water, but ours is, they all expect just to be able to turn the tap on and the water's going to be crystal clear and beautiful to drink and all the rest of it. And that's been the case for the last 40 years. And all of a sudden, because we had new infrastructure, all of a sudden you would have thought that the world was going to end, that they had to go and buy themselves some water. So one of the things that I do in that situation is, if I know the person, I ring them up. I don't engage in the banter on social media, because you're on a hiding to nothing. So you catch them out really easily, because if you ring them up, they don't expect that. They don't think that you're going to, or I message them and just say, this is my phone number, and I'm like, Jenny, my phone number's out there. And so the other thing I use a little bit, because I do have a bit of a sense of humour that's a little bit off key at times, and sometimes it just so happens that I just say things that sort of lighten the mood a little bit, because I think sometimes people become so self-important that they really think that what they're saying is the absolute truth. Everyone should understand what they're talking about. They should do exactly what they're saying. And I just think, sometimes if you can just inject a little bit of humour into the situation, good, bad or indifferent, it just lightens the mood, and then most people come at it from a different angle. So I like to go around the table. I like to make sure that everybody's heard. If somebody's being obnoxious and wants to be the only one heard, I pull them up and make sure that other people can be heard. So I just think, do I get it all right? No, definitely not. I've got a few issues at the moment that I'd really like. I'd really like to just bury it, but I can't. So you just need to. I just think, let everyone be heard, listen, and then come up with the best scenario for everybody,
Okay.
possibly.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah, I don't know whether that answered your question.
Yes, it does. I mean, I think it just demonstrates that everybody's got their unique way in which they deal with their own sort of stress and so forth. And doing that's important for everybody. But that's a good segue into the next sort of little topic, which is about personal agility, which is again something that Jalinda's talking about in this month's module, and it's a crucial emotional intelligence competency as well. And I'm sure you've all had to ride the zigzags of change, jump a few hurdles, and even perhaps, do a 180-degree turnaround. Jane, can you share with us about a time you've had to rapidly adapt or change, or perhaps quickly initiate change? So not be a part of it, but initiate it. And if there is one key lesson you've learned from that, what would that be?
The first thing that comes to mind, I guess, is the 2019 floods. We had a Northwest Queensland ROC meeting here in Hughenden on the 31st of January, and everyone was so excited because it was the very first water that was coming down the Flinders. You know, we've got a dry riverbed here most of the time, and all of a sudden it's covered in. You can see the water flowing down, and I can still, even now I can think about it. Everyone was so excited, and we had all the mayors here, and everyone was euphoric that rains were coming, and so forth. And Jenny will remember this time very well because overnight everything changed. I was actually at home with very dodgy internet. So you just had to, I had Brendan on one phone, myself on a phone, the mobile was ringing. We were doing 4 and 5 teleconferences a day. All that sort of thing where you're thinking on your feet. And then obviously there was no way I could get out of home because we'd had so much rain and we're on black soil. So, it was a matter, in that scenario, we had our LDMG, our local disaster management group. We had the engineer in Townsville. He was stuck down there with Jenny. The EHO and the leader of the LDMG, she was stuck in Torrens Creek. Our CEO was in Hughenden. I was at home. And I just think the fact that we had the telecommunications, dodgy as they were from my end, you just were able to work with everybody. We were having teleconferences with the Prime Minister, with the Premier. It was just ongoing. And it was, and the district disaster management as well. So I think you just had to play it by ear. You had to be in the moment, as Lisa has said, just being in the moment of what next, the river levels, and if you saw a message from someone upstream, which was where we were at that stage, was we were relying on Messenger of all things to tell us how much water was coming down the river. And then also having the empathy for our fellow mayors downstream. I remember Belinda Murphy and myself, and here I am saying don't turn to the alcohol, but at 11 o'clock at night we would ring each other and have a glass of wine each, over the phone. So it was just so that we could compare notes. I mean, she was ground central for the flooding in Northwest Queensland. It was just terrible for her, and I think just being able to be there for her as well, it was really, really important, as it was a time of change, minute by minute.
Yes, it certainly would be in that sort of situation. Lisa, what about your personal agility? What's an example where you've had to rapidly adapt to change or initiate change, and what's the one key lesson you've learned from that?
I think this is where my nursing definitely has helped me, particularly in intensive care for 14 years, where you just have to be adaptable and be willing to change very quickly and in a matter of seconds sometimes. So I actually quite like change. Sorry.
You don't?
I'll just give you a scenario. So back in 2008, when I first started, well, actually it would have been 2006, I ran in a by-election. So I first started door knocking constituents in the area that I wanted to run in. and I would always write down what people said they wanted. So by the time I didn't win that by-election, by the way, but in 2008, when I did win the Division 1 seat in the City of Logan, I had a number of wish lists from people. So I was able to collate that all together, and I set out plans of an action plan for short, medium, long-term sort of goals. So everything on that list has been either actioned or investigated. So last year, one of those original big projects actually came to fruition. So Underwood Park redevelopment actually came to the fore, and that's actually physically there now for the community. So that all started with a thought bubble back in 2008. And on the weekend just gone, I had a community consultation meeting with the adjoining councillor and Brisbane City Council about a major intersection upgrade for the area I represent, borders on Brisbane. So for the whole time from 2008, I lobbied and lobbied and lobbied for that intersection to be upgraded. And you can imagine Brisbane City Council weren't coming on board at all for a very long time. So eventually they did. So how I see it, how I do it is one door might close, I go another way. I always try and work out different ways of actually achieving the goal, never losing sight of that goal. But you always have to change which way you go. So, and you can imagine, particularly last term with the things that happened, which I can't really talk about too publicly here. And it wasn't a very friendly environment. So I had to be very strategic how I actually got outcomes for the community I represented. And I did get outcomes. So you just have to be adaptable and change your goalposts maybe sometimes, but don't lose sight of that end goal.
Yeah, there's one destination, but there's different ways you can get to it. Yeah,
yep.
Absolutely. And Jenny, I'm sure you've have had lots of need to zigzag and change and jump a few hurdles and stuff. Any particular one that sticks in your mind, and any key lesson that you'd like to share?
Change is an interesting thing you talk about. Politics, and we really are in many ways first level of government and politicians. When you change something, it's about messaging that change to community. I think that's the first thing you need to remind yourselves. There's a great book called The New Prince, and it talks about in the political world, if you've got to change what you're doing or where you're going, or you've been found out you're wrong, you need to go out there and talk to the community. It's when you don't do that there begins a level of mistrust about political decisions and decisions of government and decisions of council. So the first thing I would say to anyone is, if you're changing your view or your mind on an issue because you have new evidence in front of you, you need to be very good at communicating that to the public, because you can't take a position and change it midstream without having a reason. And yeah, in disaster management for us up here, it's tough sometimes because you will tell the community certain things based on information. And for us, it was about the management of the dam. Now we have an EAP we've got to work to. We keep telling the community that, and wanting to change how the EAP operates. Well, we just can't do that. So how do you explain to community, particularly after the floods, I'm sorry your home's flooded, but this is what we had to do. It's something we can't change, yet we will, how can I put it without getting myself into trouble? It's something, it's a difficult one because we manage our own dam. or we do now. Previously, it was managed by Sunwater. And after the floods, we've decided now to take over the management of the dam. So there are things sometimes that are better left in local hands, understanding the local environment, and not left in the hands of others. So you can actually navigate the things you need to do to represent for the best outcomes for your community. So through your decision process, you can change some things, and hopefully it'll be a better outcome for the community.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure everybody's got the greater good in mind. Listen, thank you, Jenny, Lisa and Jane, for sharing your thoughts and insights into resilience and the different components of resilience, which we know is regularly tested in your elected roles. Now, we've got time for a few questions before we sort of finish up. There's a couple that have come through, and if anyone who's attending would like to sort of drop another question or two, please do so through the Q&A section. Just bear with me a second, I'll just read through some of these. The first one is from Viv Coleman. As a woman leader and with the pressure of a gender neutral society, how do you progress with the values and instincts of a woman and a leader in the boardroom? Jenny, I might throw that one open to you.
Oh, God.
Good luck, Jenny.
Oh, thanks. What can I say? I'm still old-fashioned. I got raised with boys and girls in the in language, so we're not changing our language at council. I think it's just being respectful to people. That's really all you can be.
I certainly think from our perspective, I mean, a team is made up of a whole range of different individuals. That's where you get the richness of thought and the richness of decision making and so forth. And that includes gender, it includes age, it includes race, it includes a whole range of different things. So I don't think we need to sort of necessarily go down that gender neutral path. It's about appreciating what each and every one can bring to the table and bring to the discussions in their own capacity of who they are, which I think is
well, the advantage of council is you tend to get a good mix of your own local society. So around age, around gender, capabilities, people from different walks of life. You're not always all going to agree on issues around the table, but it's really about being respectful and making things work. And in some ways, I'd argue women are better than that than men. Sorry, Gary.
No need to apologise at all.
And look, Jane and I serve on a couple of boards together and things, and I often look at the body language of the men when we speak and the attention span, and lament that some things change and some things still remain the same.
No, I totally agree with you, Jenny. And I mean, I know with my role in council, not as elected, but certainly as in the senior management side of things, seeing the dynamics around the decision-making table is so much better when there is that diversity and whereas there is that, you know, different levels of thinking and bringing a richness to the discussion rather than it's all just cookie cutter stuff that suits certain people. So I mean, your bureaucrats will have a view on things that may not necessarily reflect the community values, and that's what we've got to bring to the table. Yes, yeah, absolutely agree. Where are we? Danita Potter has asked a question about how do you deal with other councillors that try to undermine you in public? I don't know whether that's resilience or not.
I got a couple of those, yeah.
Come on, Jane, I'll throw that one over to you to start with.
Oh dear. Yeah, well, we're all in a very small community. So, you know, we've been all working on committees and and bits and pieces for years together. So most of us know each other fairly well. And it's really weird in this council that we have now. It's an undivided council. So they've actually, I can't believe it, but they've actually elected 6 of us that are over 50 and 6 of us that are grazier come property people, farmers, for want of a better word. So it's an interesting mix. And when you talk of that age group, yeah, there's not a lot of the new gender equality sort of thing doesn't really come into it. But I think the strength of it is that you look at people's strengths and work on those. We all have weaknesses, so I try and push those and try and develop and lift the ship together. And we're very fortunate with our workforce in Flinders. I think we have about 12 different nationalities in our 120 people in the workforce. So it's a really amazing place to be when you have an Indian, a South African, a New Zealander, a Kenyan, a Nepalese, Canadian. You know, it's just a fun place to be sometimes. And yes, there are, especially when the cricket's on, there can be a little bit of banter, or any of those other things that bring to the fore our national pride.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you, thank you, Jane. Lisa, have you got anything you want to contribute to that?
Can you just tell me what the question was again?
How do you deal with other councillors that try to undermine you in public?
Yeah, I didn't even answer the question, did I?
Okay.
You're a politician, Jane.
Yeah, that's happened a lot. Maybe not so much with this council, but previously, yes. So I just stay present. I always treat people with the same respect that I expect to be treated with, even though they may not be doing the same. But I just stick true to my authenticity, my values, and yeah, we live stream everything. So there are members of the public who actually view what is going on. I have had people email me or message me how they believe certain people are doing the wrong thing. So obviously we've got codes of conduct that we have to adhere to. So personally, I don't like the tit for tat complaints to the Office of Independent Assessor, so I'm not going to go down this road, but I know that there have been complaints put in previously for different councillors, but I always treat people with respect. And I also, we've come from this council particularly, half male, half female roughly, except for the mayor, obviously he's a male, so that he's tipped it over a little bit. But it actually, we have a diversity in our council that actually we all bring different qualities. And so whilst I may not agree with someone's point of view, I am also respectful of their point of view. And yeah, so I just deal with everyone as I would like to be treated.
Okay, great, thank you.
Gary, can I just point out that for the new players, just be careful they're not speaking to residents who are trying to bait them by claiming things councillors have said to them. There are people out there who go councillor shopping, for example, and will say things that may not necessarily be as truthful as they could be. And to be mindful that you might think someone is undermining you when really they're not. You're just being played as a bit of a patsy by some of the community members who are trying to achieve their own goal.
Yeah.
And that's something I think you've always got to be careful of.
Wise words, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that, if I may. Sorry.
You go
It
on,
just,
Jane.
oh, well, just in our town, we have a few ex-councillors who still really like to be able to put their tuppence worth in. So, yeah, that's more our issue, I think, is that they haven't quite let go yet. And so, yeah, you've just really got to, I'm with Jenny, just be careful how you're being played. And don't play into their hands. And what Lisa said, just treat everybody the same.
Mm.
That's the most important thing. And yeah, same thing, you know, treat others as you want to be treated yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I add something, please?
Yeah, sure.
I think you need to, particularly the newer councillors, just be mindful that of agendas of people, because particularly those who are politically motivated will have a hidden agenda. I've seen it where they manipulate, particularly the vulnerable newer councillors, for their own gain. So, yeah, just be mindful that you can be easily played without realising it, and so just keep your eyes open and yeah, just question why are they doing that, or even if it's in your head, just because yeah, I've seen it a lot.
Yes. Yeah. No. Totally agree with you there. We've got time for one more question before we wrap up. This is from Cheryl Gateke. What is your council's strategy when a decision has been made that unexpectedly does not meet with community expectation? How do you patch it up with the community and regain their trust and cooperation? You can do that one, Lisa. You haven't led one off yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we have an actual strategy in terms of community. So for me, because I'm very connected with the community, I'm probably am in social media a lot. So I feel I have that connection, and I'm out in the community a lot doing mobile offices. So I get a litmus test of what the community wants. So I probably would, yeah, when decisions go against what the community wants, for me, it would be just explaining, I suppose, communication. Yeah, but I don't think we actually have a strategy as such.
Yeah.
I think it's an individual thing.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Jane, and what about you? As you've got a
yeah, I guess the most things that we've had trouble with is things that have come from higher above. They're you know, town planning, for example, we had a huge issue there. So we had a community consultation, and you bring the professionals in, let them explain it, because they just think we don't know anything. And you know, if you can get someone else to give your messaging, well, that's quite good way to do it. So, you know, we've only got 1,000 people in town, but they can have 1,000 different opinions. So, yeah, so I think it's really good to bring a professional in that can talk the talk, not over talk them, but talk to them on their level. And that particular time, it was about horses in town, and yeah, it was a really good ploy. So I learned early to bring the professionals in and do community meetings, if that's the way you can organise it.
Okay, thank you. And Jenny, would you like one final word?
I spoke earlier about courage, and sometimes as a council, you have to take a leadership role and take a decision that not everyone's going to agree with. As long as you've based it on sound principles and you can communicate that, that's really all you can do. Not everyone's going to agree with you. If I could swear, I'd tell you a story about opinions and how everyone's got one, especially from their rear ends, but I won't. That was a comment given to me by someone, because everyone does have an opinion. And whether you've got the facts to back up your claim or not, some people just aren't going to listen to that because you're actually proving them wrong. So if you're going to take a decision, make sure it's based on fact, if it's going to be an unpopular one. And sometimes you've just got to ride that crest to be proven right in the future. That's all you can do.
No, absolutely. And there's some very wise words at the end there. Thank you, Jenny. And listen, we've now run out of time, but we really do appreciate Jenny, Jane and Lisa for taking the time to share your thoughts and insights as your roles of elected members to those that are participating in this program. So once again, we thank you deeply for your time and effort, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very
so
much, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.